Today's story takes us to Warren, Massachusetts. Warren is a town in Worcester County, Massachusetts. The town is located around an hour and 20 minutes west of Boston. The overall population of Warren is listed as being just shy of 5,000 residents. The small town offers a peaceful and relatively crime-free living for the many families that choose to reside there. But in the summer of 2000, the quiet, peaceful community would be plunged into turmoil. Molly Bish was only 16 years old when she started working as a lifeguard at Coleman's Pond in Warren, Massachusetts. On her 7th day of working, Molly's mother would drive her to the pond like she had done many days prior. It was around 10 a.m., and the pair would soon say their goodbyes, and Molly's mother would watch her head off towards the lifeguard station. Around 13 minutes later, swimmers would start arriving at the lake. They found Molly's chair, her sandals, her lunch bag, her first aid kit, and her two-way police radio. It appeared at first that Molly had just abandoned her post, but soon it would become very clear that something more nefarious had taken place on that beach, as 16-year-old Molly Bish would never be seen alive again. This is the Molly Bish story. Welcome to The Cellar. Molly Bish was born on August 2, 1983. Her family had originally lived in Detroit, Michigan, but due to growing crime rates, Molly's family decided they needed to move and find a safer place to raise their children. The family would move to the quiet and quaint town of Warren, Massachusetts. Now, I have seen some differing reports. One report stated that Molly was born and lived her entire life in Warren, while I also found another report that stated that Molly was around a year old when the family decided to leave Detroit. Either way, Molly spent almost her entire life within Warren, Massachusetts. Molly's father would work as a police officer, and her mother would stay at home raising their kids. Molly was the youngest of the 3 children. She had an older brother and sister named John Jr. and Heather. Growing up, Molly was said to have been a positive, funny, and uplifting young woman. In high school, Molly had numerous friends, and it's said that she was a kind, caring person who was always making those around her laugh. Molly was a talented athlete and academic. She was an honor student who hoped to one day work with children. While she wasn't studying, she was typically playing soccer, basketball, or softball, soccer being her absolute favorite sport to play. It's easy to say that life was going great for the teenager. She had lots of friends, was doing well in school and with sports, and she had just recently gone to prom with her new boyfriend. As her junior year came to a close and summer began, Molly was looking to get a job and earn money so she could go shopping and do things with her friends. Molly's older brother had been a lifeguard at Coleman's Pond for a few years and was able to put in a good word for his sister. This resulted in Molly obtaining the lifeguard position, and she was excited that she would be able to enjoy the summer on the beach while getting paid for it at the same time. Before Molly began her new job, her brother would show her all the ins and outs of what to do and where to set up at Coleman's Pond. From all reports, Molly's first week on duty went well, and she was truly enthusiastic with her lifeguard duties. And that now brings us to the day that Molly disappeared. As I said in the opener, it was Molly's 7th day of work. It was Tuesday, June 27th, 2000. Prior to heading to work, Molly and her mother would stop at the local police station to pick up her two-way police radio. They then proceeded to the pond, arriving at around 10 a.m. Molly said goodbye to her mother and proceeded to go set up at her lifeguard station. Minutes later, swimmers arrived for their morning lessons. One parent noticed Molly was missing and proceeded to take over the lifeguard duties. That parent would also radio in to Molly's boss, and initially, it was presumed that Molly had simply abandoned her post. It was believed that the teenager may have just run off with some friends, as it was the summer. Per policy, Molly's boss would contact the local police department. They too came to the same conclusion, just presuming that Molly had run off with some friends. At the time, they all believed that she would return for her stuff later in the day. But as my mother always told me, when you assume, well, you make an ass out of you and me. Or in this case, you allow a potential crime scene to get completely trampled all over for an entire day before finally starting to take things serious. As we see in a lot of true crime cases, the ball was seemingly dropped right from the get-go. At around 1 p.m. that afternoon, Molly had still not returned, and the police would finally contact her parents. I don't normally throw my opinions in while telling the story, but no way 3 hours should have passed before her parents were contacted. From all reports, Molly was an extremely responsible teenager. In this case, she should have been treated as such, and things should have been looked into far sooner. When the police contacted Molly's mother, she was immediately alarmed and didn't agree with the police's initial thoughts that Molly had just abandoned her post. Molly's mother would jump into action herself, contacting her friends and her boyfriend, but no one had seen Molly. Molly's mother would drive back over to the pond to investigate, and when she saw her daughter's things that were left behind, well, she immediately knew something was very wrong. She contacted the police again, and after some back and forth, she was finally able to get them to come out and take her daughter's case seriously. When the police arrived at the pond, they observed Molly's belongings and soon came to the conclusion that she may have drowned. The pond would soon be searched, but no sign of Molly was located. From there, the police had no choice but to start considering that maybe Molly had been abducted. But who could have taken her? And how did they do it in such a short window of time? As police continued their search for Molly, her mother soon had a terrifying realization. She may know who took her daughter. It was June 26, 2000, the day before Molly Bish vanished. Molly and her mother would pull into the parking lot to drop her off at the lifeguard post. There in the parking lot sat a white car. Inside the car, there was a man with dark hair and a thick mustache. He was just sitting there, smoking a cigarette. As Molly got out of the car and walked to the pond, her mother noticed that the man was watching her daughter's every move, staring at her intently as he took another long drag on his smoke. The man being there made her extremely uncomfortable, so she hopped out of her car and proceeded to go and help Molly set up at her lifeguard station. As she returned to her car, she figured the man would be gone by now, but he was still sitting there in his car. Molly's mother soon hopped into her car, but she still felt very uneasy leaving her daughter alone at the pond with this man lurking in the parking lot. So she sat there in her car, waiting for the man to leave, and it appears he eventually got the hint as he soon drove off and left the area. Molly's mother felt some relief at the time, but with Molly now missing, this memory soon flooded back to her, leaving her to wonder if she saw the very man who took her daughter. The police were soon notified of this incident, and a sketch artist would be brought in. I will now display a picture of that sketch for you all to see. With the police now realizing that they not only have a missing persons case, but a potential abduction, they soon brought in the state police to assist. As I said before, Warren is a small town, and they simply weren't equipped to handle what this case was turning into. With the state police now involved, the sketch of the man smoking a cigarette was soon released to the public. Tips would begin flooding in, including some people who claimed that they saw the white car in the area around the pond on the day that Molly went missing. The police would follow up on all the tips, but they were unable to locate or pinpoint a potential suspect in the case. Weeks would soon go by with no sign of Molly. Her family remained hopeful she would be found. But as we all know, the more time that goes by in cases like this, the lower the chances are that you will find your loved one still alive. Police would soon make the decision to look a little bit closer at the people around Molly Bish, in particular her boyfriend Steve. The pair had not been together long, but police found it odd that her boyfriend had not been overly cooperative, to the point where it said that he didn't help in the searches for her. Police felt this was weird to say the least, but Molly's family were quick to come out and defend Steve. Steve would eventually go to the police station and volunteer to take a polygraph test. The results would show that he was not lying, and police would rule him out as a suspect in the case. Soon, those weeks would turn to months, and the police would up their search efforts in the case. In fact, the search for Molly Bish would end up becoming the largest and most expensive search for a missing person ever undertaken in the great state of Massachusetts. Molly's case was all over TV and the news, and it was even featured on an episode of Unsolved Mysteries. The area around the pond was searched extensively with volunteers and canines, but not a single piece of evidence was ever located. It was as if Molly had simply vanished into thin air. As more time passed, soon those months turned into a year, and a year would turn into 3. Molly was still missing, and it felt like the police weren't any closer to finding answers in her case. That was until May 8th, 2003. A hunter in the nearby city of Palmer, Massachusetts, had seen a piece of blue bathing suit out in the woods while he was hunting. He didn't originally think much of it, but the information was eventually relayed to the police. An alarming piece of information, as Molly Bish was last seen wearing a blue bathing suit. The police would swiftly take action and began searching the woods in the area where the hunter said he saw the bathing suit. And within only a couple days of searching, the police would locate the blue bathing suit within the woods. With the bathing suit located, the police soon sent it out to a lab for DNA testing. While they waited for results, they continued to search the wooded area where it was found. Eventually, results would come in, and it was conclusive. This was Molly Bish's bathing suit. The police were confident now that they were on the right track, and the search of the woods would continue on for weeks. On June 9th, 2003, the remains of Molly Bish were finally located within the woods of Palmer, Massachusetts, only a handful of miles away from where she went missing. For 3 years, the family had remained hopeful that maybe, just maybe, one day they would bring their child home, and those hopes were now crushed into a million pieces. Due to the extreme rate of decomposition, Molly's cause of death was impossible to unravel. Nonetheless, it was ultimately determined that her death was due to homicide. The Molly Bish missing persons case was now being shifted into a homicide investigation, the primary suspect still being that man with the mustache and cigarette. It has now been 24 years since Molly Bish went missing, and in that time, the police have investigated countless leads, but no arrests have ever been made in the case. One positive that has come about in this case more recently is the fact that police have officially named someone as a suspect. That someone is convicted rapist Frank Sumner, who passed away back in 2016. But in 2021, he was officially named a suspect within the case. If you view his picture, you can see an eerie resemblance to the man that was sitting in the car with the cigarette. According to the Worcester County District Attorney Joe Early, there's a lot of evidence that leads to Frank Sumner. That's why we first named him a person of interest and then a suspect. We are not stopping. We are going to do everything we can to make sure that this case gets closed out. According to my research, there are 267 pieces of physical evidence within this case, and investigators have received more than 6,700 leads and tips throughout the decades. Right now, the police are going back through all the pieces of evidence they have accumulated within the case. Their hope is that new technology will help them discover DNA evidence that can be linked to the person that took Molly's life. If Frank Sumner did do it, it's tragic that he can't be held accountable. Although some may say that his passing in 2016 was karma doing what it needed to reset the scales. After looking at this case, I have only one theory. I believe whoever took Molly had it all planned out. They were potentially watching her for numerous days, seeing her routine, knowing when people show up at the pond. They knew there could be a brief moment in the morning where she would be alone. I think whoever did this did it by taking advantage of Molly's helpful and giving nature. Based on the fact that her first aid kit was left open, I'm led to believe that someone came up to her in a hurry, claiming to either be injured or that someone else was injured. In the heat of the moment, I think Molly opened up her first aid kit, potentially grabbing some items from it and proceeding away from the pond with the person. From there, they could have snatched her at any opportune moment. Perhaps they lured her near their vehicle, perhaps they lured her near the woods. Either way, they were very quick and very slick in how they managed to get their hands on her. Molly was 16, she was a lifeguard, and her job was to watch, protect, and help those in need at the pond. Some despicable human being saw her and decided she was the perfect mark. Molly Bish was a beacon of bright light, a talented, smart, caring, and hardworking young woman that was preyed on by an absolute dredge of the society we live in. So please, hold your kids close. Teach them to be a good person like Molly Bish, but also teach them to be aware of the darkness that can lurk within any town, village, city, or community. You may live in a safe, beautiful, quiet town, but you can never truly know if that person next door to you is harboring a monster deep within. I want to send my deepest condolences to all of Molly Bish's family and friends. Also, if you have any information as to what happened to Molly Bish, please reach out to the Warren, Massachusetts Police Department. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. If you enjoy the content, please hit that like and subscribe button. It helps the channel continue to grow. Also, if you want to make sure you don't ever miss a new upload, you can turn on the bell notification after you subscribe. In the description box below, you'll find a link to my merch store and a link to the Cellar Dwellers membership tier for the channel. If you're interested, please take a moment to go check those things out. If you'd like to submit your own scary story or any kind of story recommendation, you can do so using the email I have linked in the description box below. As always, I do all the research, writing, recording, and editing for the channel myself, so anything you do to support this channel is greatly appreciated. Until next time, I will see you all again as we head back into the cellar.